Okay, welcome to a brand new video series. My name is Torsion, and I'm joined by my good friend Blake Man, and we'll be taking you through a ongoing game on the Reddit Dominion 5 Discord. The game title is Rams. It's currently turn two, and Blake Man step into or turn three. Blake Man stepping into this a little bit blind, so we're gonna go over some high-level nation overview information, and then walk through maybe a couple of the first expansions, and then in future turns we'll go a little bit more in depth as we go. Sound good to you, Blake Man?
Yeah, sounds fun. Let's get into it.
Okay, so this is a 12-player game. It is leveraging the Dominion Enhanced mod. So from a nation perspective, I'm gonna butcher most of these, but we have. I'll actually let you pronounce these nations if you don't mind.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
Let's have a look.
I'll do
What
the
do we
easy
got?
ones. We got Ulm, we got TC, um,
Hey, that's cheating. You have to say the full name.
Tien Chai or something. We got Asphodel. We got Shinuyama, Flagra. Uh, can't pronounce this one.
uh,
Phaeacia.
Phaeacia, yep.
And then unique to the Dominions or the Reddit Discord, we actually have four underwater nations in this game, so it's going to be a little bit spicy. Quite a big pond. We have Atlantis, Ryla, Yis, Ryugajo, Shambalaya, which is another mod nation. So,
Shambhala, yep.
oh, actually, this is just 11 players. Sorry, I was incorrect earlier. But that's our lineup for the game. Um, Quick overview of the map here. As you can see, heavily dominated by water in the middle. The pond is a little bit unique layout. It was a little bit difficult with map nuke, but essentially we got an odd man out in the middle here in Rely. But you've got Atlantis, Rely, yes, Ryuga Joe are the four underwaters with Rely being right in the middle. And then just to the north of Atlantis, you've got a coastal start, Phaeacia, or however you want to say it.
hmm
Any questions?
Interesting. It's interesting that we have this big land area in the very middle between the water nations.
Yeah, because it's an
I think it's
11
going to get
player
spicy.
map nuke generation, it gives roughly 23 provinces per player, so quite a bit of expansion, but the map nuke defaults don't increase the number of water provinces that drastically. So there's actually a decent
Mm.
amount of land for Yis, for example.
Which I think is a good way to play it, even as a self-proclaimed dirty underwater player. I think that it's healthy to have a smaller area of water versus land because then it forces the underwater nations to claim land territory, and then the land nations can fight them on land. So you don't get quite as toxic a relationship where the underwater are kind of butted up right against the land air nations, and the land nations can't really do anything about it.
Yeah,
So I
that
think this
makes
is good.
sense. So before we jump into the first, actually, we're not able to see blesses. Okay, so high level, just we'll walk through the scales real quick. A little bit of order, a little bit of prod, and some growth over in Yes. Full scales over here in Rely, except for luck. Atlantis seems almost neutral scales across the board, and then heavy death scales coming out of Rayuga Joe. We'll continue on this line. Phaeacia, a little bit of turmoil, and then three productivity, some misfortune, some growth, and some magic mixed in there. Then we'll step over to the rest of the land folk. Um, Interesting from Shinamayo, you can go perfect scales with an imprisoned. Um, they probably have maybe a dormant titan based on these scales, if I had to guess. Any guesses from yourself on this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's almost perfect scales except they dump misfortune,
Yeah.
which I think you would struggle to get even dormant with a Titan.
Oh, yeah, I think you'd have to have maybe one or two lower scales on the trooper magic side, and then Misfortune 3 coming out over here on Tien Chai or however
Spicy.
we're gonna say it. So that's gonna be interesting to watch. Uh, our friends over in Flagra, Death 3, terrible production scales, but Magic 3 and a little bit of luck, which is interesting to see. And then strong scales coming out of Shambhalaya. Ulm, interestingly enough, dropped an order scale but went full productivity and then went misfortune. So it looks like
Do you know if turn one, you always have like your complete set of scales in your cap?
I believe yes, you have your complete scales. You do not have the
Because the
correct
Dominion
Dominion
is lower.
value.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. I may be wrong. And then Asphodel, this one is going to throw you through a loop here. They are a sloth
Wait,
power.
production?
Yeah, they have black centaurs with sloth power, but they've
Mm.
gone full troop scales.
Well, that's it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Yeah, so quite an
That's
unusual
certainly
set of
unusual.
scales here. And I think
They,
that's everyone. Did I miss anyone's scales? No, I don't think so. So maybe we'll hop right into here, go over these battles, and then call it a wrap for episode 1.
yeah, sure. Nice and easy.
So no expansions, turn 2, no blind expands. We do have a couple folks with a double expand here, Flagra and TC. Otherwise, everyone did single expands.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. Um, regular troop expand here. Let's see, no sacreds, so probably not worth going through. Anything you want to see here?
Nah, it looks like it's very straightforward.
And then
Same here,
again
really.
from
Although
Flagra, yeah, no sacreds.
yeah,
Relatively straightforward expansion.
a little bit uncomfortable amount of loss, but I don't think they care too much. It's just the starting army.
Yeah, and they did a double expand, so they'll probably be in pretty good shape. This one's actually worth taking a look at. We mentioned those black centaurs, the sloth power. Um, they're relatively unique in Dom 5. They've got sloth power and a sleep aura. Um, we'll give it a couple rounds here just to see the bless. And then from a bless perspective, no
What
bless.
the? Well, that makes sense. I mean, if they're going production 3, they're not exactly going to take a big bless for their now weak Black Centaurs.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Um, yeah,
I wonder what god they've gone then.
something to keep an eye on moving forward. Shinu, relatively standard expansion. A little bit higher losses than I
Yeah.
probably would have liked, but
Once they get their gold cranking, the
yep.
Bakamon was so cheap.
We'll take a look at this one.
This should be a big hell bless, I'm guessing.
With those scales, you'd hope so. Surprise.
Oh, what are they doing then?
I think it's going to be an even bigger dormant incarnate Hellbless.
That's real risky.
Yeah.
I mean, it's strange to me because it's not really. I mean, regen I guess is okay, but not not really because your sacreds they have a 2 HP pools, and you're only regenning based off your current HP pool. So they have 12 HP, and then when they get low, they turn into this half dragon form, which has another 18. But you're only getting the regen, the 10% regen for each of those pools separately. So it's not really good synergy. So I wonder really what they've gone.
You gotta figure it's a heavy thug bless.
Yeah, it must
But
be. They must be just using these guys for the quick expansion and then trying to get straight into the dragon thugs.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch.
Mm. Well, I think their position is quite safe, at least, right, from the other water nations.
You would
So they
think
kind of
so.
got.
I think there's an opportunity for the Ryla player to do some heavy Diplo with maybe Atlantis and say, hey, our best shot of stopping Ryuga Joe is early, so let me run them down. I don't know what your thoughts
I think
are
it's
on
the
that.
right call. I mean, I think that they should do that because this is the opportunity. Ryogujo, I mean, they have great troops, but they're really relying on a little bit of spice early to beat the likes of Rylea. because those troops are all low MR. I mean, they have their sacreds, but with no bless, they're expensive and not like they're strong, but they're not that strong. So I think that if Ryogojo got double teamed in the first year of expansion, like during expansion or just before the god wakes up, they're in really big trouble.
Yep, it's going to be something interesting to watch. And
Yeah, for sure.
then here we've got light losses, so strong expansion so far. Ulm with a perfect expand, which is always nice to see.
Good old Ulm. Couple of losses, but nothing too major here. Those are just the starting
Yeah,
cruddy troops. And we have an expand monster, Sphinx. Not something you see that often.
no, it is not. And then from a path perspective, we have S10 on the expander, D6, and then
S10.
it's fighting out of Dominion, so we don't quite see the bless here, but um, lots of paths.
Presumably it's an ethereal bless.
You gotta think so. I, I think I'll take a quick look. What were their scales again? Did they have any luck? Could they have taken? So they have luck 1. Could they have taken a luck bless?
Would be a luck bless with luck 1. It should be odd to push all the way then up to Astral 10.
Maybe luck and MR?
It's a weird one, but let's have a look at bringing up the mod inspector. I'm more familiar with late age Phlegra. Middle age I'm less familiar with.
I think it's similar. They've got the tyrants. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
they have tyrants, but no real sacreds. Am I missing something here? They
I
get
don't
summonable
think so.
sacreds?
It's odd to take, honestly, it's odd to take luck or ethereal from a thug perspective, in my view. I think luck is better
Yeah.
the more troops it impacts rather than it just impacting a thug, you know?
Yeah, luck is definitely an odd one, but maybe they know something we don't. I mean, this is not a nation that I'm that familiar with. My understanding of them was that they're really not very sacred focused at all.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to
Sometimes you
see.
get some spicy blesses and people come up with some cool stuff. I mean, that's the beauty of Dominions, right?
And here, speaking of spicy blesses, we got the TC Expander Dragon, Water 11.
What a 11. Must be quickness. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah,
quickness.
it's quickness. TC actually has a number of both summonable sacreds in a few different flavors that hit really freaking hard. Both the like the half horse looking guys and then the demons of the rivers or whatever. So
Yeah, Demons of Heavenly Rivers, which are
yeah, with
really tough
quickness,
sacred.
it's gonna hit real hard. The lack of magic weapons, I don't think either one, the demons or the celestial soldiers, I don't believe either one has a magic weapon. So um, someone painting some ethereal is going to be an issue, but they still hit very hard.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I'm not. I'm guessing it's really trying to create some early power with those summonable sacreds and the
Yeah,
Red Guards, which are a great unit. I mean, I
red
think it
guards
is
are.
a. It's the kind of bless I think that you are trying to get an advantage before people have enough to really be painting that kind of body ethereal on units.
Yep.
Because very quickly, I mean, TC gets water mages. You know, water 1 and a quarter of them are water 2 straight off the gate, and so you can paint quickness relatively easy into mid to late game anyway. So I think they're really focusing here on going hard early. That would be my guess.
Yep. And then we've got Atlantis here. Nothing unexpected.
Yeah, good solid expansion from them. It looks like they might be going a bless. What kind of bless does Atlantis have? It's not unusual to go blessless with Atlantis or something very light. It looks like they didn't even bother blessing them. So
Yeah.
probably.
Let's see. Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
there we go.
There's the bless. Relatively light defense, magic
Yeah,
weapons,
quite light.
cold resist.
That makes sense. Atlantis' real power is their recruit anywhere mages that can get up to water 5, but they're not sacred. So it's a kind of a bit of a waste to go too hard on a Blessed of Atlantis.
Yep. But strong expansion from them, and then our good friends, the Underwater Elves. Look at those ponies racing out there. Relatively standard Rainbow Bless, in my view. Anything unexpected?
No, that's almost cookie cutter.
Yep. You got swiftness,
Very
you got
straightforward.
defense skill, attack skill. Not a ton of strength. They opted for Blood Surge. I know there's been a lot of debate. Where do you come down on Blood Surge versus strength?
I'm usually more of a fan of strength, but I think that, I mean, really, Blood Surge makes sense if you have a unit that does a lot of damage on the first strike. So the weakness of Blood Surge is you really have to get that first kill. And so if your unit is not killing quickly, you're not getting that advantage when you really need it, which is that initial engagement. But Morvark Knights have a lance. Their first hit does a huge amount of damage. They don't really need that strength for the first hit. And then once they've killed something, now they've got that Blood Surge. So I think it makes sense for this unit. Even though I wouldn't normally, I think I'm more of a fan of just the strength for the consistency.
Yep.
Certainly here it makes sense.
And then, yeah, solid expansion for them. And that wraps it up. There's our turn 3 situation. So a couple people with the double expand, most people with the single. A few odd blesses and sets of scales. Asphodel, typically your early game power with a heavy reliance on the Black Centaurs, is trying something completely different. And then we'll see what the rest of the game holds. Any closing
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think that really the ones in terms of the unusual builds to watch are going to be Asphodel, which is very out there, and I'm also very interested to see what Flagger is, because again, this is built very non-standard. Everyone else kind of makes sense, like they've done things that make sense, but those two nations really wacky, which hopefully means we get to see something really creative, and not just a dud.
Yeah, and then as always, the pond is going to be interesting. Like we mentioned, 4 underwater nations is relatively rare for what we see in this community. And then a dormant Ryuga Joe is going to be fascinating to see what they come up with when that god wakes up.
Yeah, it's going to be real spicy underwater. I'm also interested to see how the Diplo goes because we have this really central Rylea,
Yep.
which certainly tempts a coalition against them early as the most powerful underwater nation, at least in the very early game. Underwater versus underwater. His is, I think, stronger than a lot of people realize. Underwater, the Morvark Knights obviously are not as good, but they can hold their own still. And they do surprisingly okay. And Atlantis, they take a little bit to get going. They've got okay troops, but they really need research. And so I think it's really going to come down to whether or not Rylea gets coalitioned or whether they can do some diplomacy and kind of knock Ryugo out of that pond early.
Yeah, and from a land nation perspective, I forgot to mention we are using the Bluefire underwater access mod. So land options or land nations have a few more options and paths to um, get things like water breathing and amphibious, but we don't have your amphib MA nations like Zib or Airmore. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic shapes out as well.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see if anyone risks it in this game. I think that there's certainly an opportunity. There's enough water nations that there would be an opportunity for a land nation to get involved in a fight, especially those that have a bit more water pathing.
Yep.
But I think we'll have to see how it plays out. It's one of those tricky things where, even with the mod, very few players have experience fighting underwater. And so it's scary to kind of make that first leap. So we'll see whether or not any players are kind of willing to risk it.
Well, that wraps up episode 1. Appreciate the time, and we'll be back with we'll probably do the turns 4, 5, 6. Try to chunk through them relatively quickly until we start getting to some player combat. But wanted to give you a bit of a longer overview for setting the stage, if you will.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for having me on. This is going to be an interesting game.
Thanks for joining me.